Anyone who spent time around the Orange County chopper shop knows the pattern. One person grinding metal while someone else looks over their shoulder. It's been that way for years, and the tension behind it goes back far longer than most fans realize. Paul Teutul Jr. turned his family's business into a television phenomenon, but the cost of that fame was a relationship with his father that still hasn't recovered. Long before cameras arrived, Paul Jr. was already living a very different childhood than his classmates. While other 12-year-olds spent their afternoons at the beach or in front of television, he was sweeping metal shavings off the floor of Orange County Iron Works and fetching tools for the welders. Even earlier than that, he'd wander his father's job sites collecting scraps of leftover metal, treating them like toys and arranging them into makeshift sculptures. That habit of seeing potential in discarded material became the foundation of everything he'd later build. By 14, he was welding with a steadiness that impressed grown men who'd been doing it for decades. He wasn't just absorbing technique. He was starting to think the way a builder thinks. But the environment that shaped him wasn't gentle. His father, Paul Sr., ran a tight, demanding shop and held his son to a higher standard than anyone else working there. Mistakes weren't quietly corrected. They were called out in front of the whole crew. Some saw it as excessive. But Sr. believed toughness was the only way to build character. The two of them were wired differently from the start. Paul Sr. valued raw power and old-school methods, while Jr. gravitated toward clean lines and refined detail. Their aesthetic differences occasionally caused friction, but there were also small moments of quiet respect. Like the time Jr. reworked a railing design that his father initially waved off, only to see him adopt it days later, without ever acknowledging the change out loud. Rather than sit through typical high school coursework, Paul Jr. enrolled in a vocational program that let him spend half his day mastering welding, blueprint reading, and structural fabrication. Teachers noticed he had an intuitive feel for how metal behaved before he even touched it. He put in extra hours after class, refining every weld until it became second nature, convinced that hands-on mastery mattered more than any diploma. When he returned to the family shop after finishing school, he was no longer the kid running errands. He was a legitimate fabricator capable of producing professional results. By 19, he was overseeing the railing division at Orange County Iron Works, a department that generated nearly half the company's revenue. It would have been easy to dismiss his rise as favoritism, but his work spoke for itself. Customers began requesting his design specifically, willing to pay more and wait longer. He also earned the respect of a crew made up largely of older, more experienced workers, including military veterans who were initially skeptical of a boss half their age. Despite the success, something still felt unfinished. Building railings and staircases, however impressive, wasn't the creative outlet he was chasing. The shift began quietly, with Jr. sketching motorcycle designs in a notebook after long shifts. Around the same time, his father developed a renewed interest in bikes and asked for his son's help on a build. When Sr. saw the drawings his son had been working on in secret, he realized they weren't just technically sound. They were genuinely artistic. That moment led to a decision to turn their shared interest into an actual business rather than a side hobby. They pooled roughly $175,000 from a family ironworking business to launch Orange County Choppers, though the partnership wasn't structured equally. Sr. held an 80% stake to Jr.'s 20%. It didn't feel important at the time. What mattered was that they had tools, ambition, and a freezing basement to work in. Their first build, a blue and white bike nicknamed True Blue, took 4 months of nonstop labor. When they debuted at Daytona in 1999, it caught serious attention. Success didn't arrive smoothly, though. The early 2000s were financially brutal. Broken equipment, suppliers demanding upfront payment, and constant cash shortages. Paul Jr. frequently worked 18-hour stretches and slept on a shop couch just to keep bills on schedule. Arguments between father and son were common, driven less by ego and more by sheer survival pressure. In 2002, a producer named Craig Peligian reached out after spotting a magazine feature on their work. He was developing a reality series and initially pitched a show about restoring old bikes, an idea Sr. rejected outright, insisting they built machines from the ground up. Weeks later, Peligian returned with a different concept. Filmed the process as it actually happened, disagreements included. Jr. was uneasy about the idea, fear it would embarrass the family, and even wrote his father a lengthy letter warning that cameras could damage their reputation. The contract itself wasn't especially generous either, but they signed anyway, needing the money. When American Chopper premiered in March 2003, it became an instant hit, pulling in millions of viewers within its first few episodes. The shop transformed into a tourist destination, merchandise sales soared, and the company expanded into a much larger facility. While Senior's temper initially drew viewers in, it was Junior's meticulous, quiet focus at the welding table that kept people watching. Footage of him building components in near silence became some of the most replayed content from the show, and welding program enrollment across the country reportedly ticked upward because of it. Few bills defined the show's cultural impact like the Black Widow, a bike featuring an elaborate spiderweb pattern gas tank that took more than 160 hours to complete. When it was unveiled in New York, thousands of fans showed up, and merchandise tied to the design sold hundreds of thousands of units within months. Perhaps the most emotionally significant project, though, was the bike Junior built as a tribute to firefighters who died on September 11th. He personally welded a piece of steel salvage from the World Trade Center wreckage onto frame and redesigned the bike structure to accommodate hundreds of hand-painted emblems, each representing a fallen firefighter. When the bike was later damaged in an accident, the New York Fire Department treated its recovery with the same care they'd give a fallen colleague. It remains on permanent display and continues to draw visitors who leave notes and tributes beside it. Years later, Junior built a second 9/11 tribute bike, unveiled in 2011 alongside notable figures connected to Memorial, with proceeds from a raffle companion bike going toward the museum fund. Beyond the emotional builds, Junior also developed real technical innovations, adopting new digital design software that dramatically cut design time, later creating lighter but equally strong frame systems, and teaching himself the programming language used to operate CNC machinery, so he could control fabrication from concept to execution. Trouble had been building beneath the surface since 2007, when Senior gave his son a 20% ownership stake, but retained full control of the company. As Junior's design work drew more attention than his father's traditional approach, resentment quietly grew. By 2008, the shop had effectively become a pressure cooker, with disputes over creative freedom versus obedience becoming a near-daily occurrence. Other employees weren't immune either. The strain affected the entire crew. Things came to a head in September 2008 during an argument over Junior arriving late. What started as a reprimand escalated into a full blowout in front of the whole shop. When Junior pushed back, insisting the company depended on his work, Senior lost his temper completely. Junior, equally furious, threw a chair in a trash can before storming out, and Senior fired him immediately afterward, a moment that would later become widely referenced online. The fallout was chaotic. The crew split in loyalty. Customers worried about the brand's future, and the network threatened Junior with breach of contract for leaving the show. He briefly returned as a contractor, but by April 2009, the split was final. Senior then attempted to buy out his son's ownership stake, and when Junior refused, filed a lawsuit seeking both the shares and additional damages, even naming the company itself as a co-defendant in an effort to force the issue. The legal fight hinged on a poorly written contract clause about how to value a buyout, and it dragged through the New York courts. An initial ruling favored Senior, but an appeals court later reversed that decision, finding the clause too vague to enforce. Junior kept his stake, marking a significant personal and legal victory, though a one-year non-compete clause meant he couldn't build motorcycles commercially until 2010. During that forced pause, Junior pivoted into product design, working on projects like a dog park and a grill redesign for Coleman. He later described it as one of the hardest periods of his life, but he kept moving forward, eventually launching Paul Jr. Designs out of a converted room in his house, situated deliberately across the street from his father's shop. When his non-compete expired in 2010, several key employees, including longtime crew members and his own brother, left Orange County Choppers to join him, a mass departure that infuriated his father. Discovery Channel capitalized on the rift with a new series pitting the two men against each other directly, a show many critics dismissed as manufactured drama rather than genuine storytelling. Amid the chaos, Junior met his future wife,